Hey buddy, watch this.
Hello, hello, Regis Kilbin is the name, and Heroes of the Storm is the game, and this is my first look at Li-Ming, the latest hero in Heroes of the Storm. Now, when I say that, it's not actually my first look at Li-Ming. I've actually been playing this character for quite a while, and already have her to level 9. I'm just a little bit late recording my first impressions video for Li-Ming, so hopefully this is your first look at Li-Ming someday in the distant future when you're going back through previously released heroes, and I can help you learn her basic abilities and walk you through her talents pretty quickly so that you get an idea on the abilities and the strategies and the general playstyle that Li-Ming has to offer. So I won't be quite as exploratory as normal since I already know the basics of this hero, but I might have even more for you to learn, so stick around as we run through this. Li-Ming, of course, is a ranged assassin who is completely reliant on ability damage and her trait, which anytime she secures a kill, or actually is just a part of a kill, anytime your team secures a kill, I should say, all of her cooldowns reset, including any heroic abilities. So if you kill one guy, you can instantly fire 3 more abilities and probably kill the second guy very quickly, and essentially just chain that while you're killing multiple people very rapidly. It's an extremely powerful trait, is critical mass, and it does define her as a character. That's why she's such a high skill cap character. Whenever she gets rolling and you play her well, you can tend to carry your team pretty well. Excuse me while I reset the level here to our standardized level 20. So when it comes to basic abilities for Li-Ming, you have your Q, which is called Magic Missiles. This fires 3 missiles at a very long range, and the farther away they are, the more spread out the trajectory of the 3 missiles come. But if you line them up very close, for instance, you can actually shoot almost completely sideways for 2 of them and 1 heading forward. So as far as aiming this is concerned, typically you want all 3 missiles to hit a single target, and if you aim your cursor approximately where that target will be, whether they're standing still or where they're going to be by the time the missiles land, you should somewhat capably be able to hit all 3 on the target. So you'll see there I just lined up my cursor right where I wanted them to hit, and all 3 landed. So they do have a little bit of wiggle room. You'll note the bar is a little wide, so it doesn't have to be perfect. And that said, you really don't always have to hit every magic missile. It is a skill shot, so try your best. It has a very short 3-second cooldown, and it operates almost like a basic attack in a sense for Li-Ming. She does have a basic attack, but it doesn't do much damage, so this is really kind of her base core default damage that she can offer. It's very low mana, low cooldown, so you can fire this thing off without worrying too much about hitting every single missile. Arcane Orb is her next ability, her W. A little bit more mana, considerably longer cooldown, but still not particularly long at only 10 seconds. This fires an orb that does quite a bit of damage, in fact a ton of damage. If it hits something up close, it doesn't do much, but when it hits way out here at the max range, it hits like a tank, like a cannon. It is a monster ability. You can see that in action, of course, down here on the target dummy. When we hit him up close, we hit for 451 there, and let's turn our cooldowns off. When we hit him far away, or at least farther away, we hit for 813. So, you know, just a few steps made a difference of 400 damage. So using this well, you basically have to line up kind of far away and try to hit people, especially out of vision, so they won't see the orb coming, for instance, until it's almost going to hit them. Try to line up far away from safe distance so you can poke, because both of these do have a considerable range. And in fact, until this gets nerfed in a future patch, which I suspect it will, Li-Ming can knock down towers and forts very safely from range. You saw me chunking that tower there at level 20. So her third basic ability is Teleport, another short cooldown, low mana, 5-second cooldowns, 30 mana. You can teleport a short distance. This is really an escape primarily that allows her to gain a little bit of ground, but is much better at avoiding skill shots that might be coming your way. So if a Nova drops a precision strike, you can teleport out to safety because you don't have very much health to work with. And it can be used offensively as well, I should note. If you're chasing someone down and you need to get in range for an auto attack or to more reliably hit your abilities, That's a possibility. Just be careful because you are very squishy, and committing that hard to an engagement can leave you in trouble. So let's go ahead and fire through her talents really quickly. Since she's been out a while and good talents have already been determined by the player base, I don't want to spend too much time on most of them, but let's just run through them all in the interest of consistency with my first impressions videos. Up first is Astral Presence. Your mana regeneration is increased by 100% while below 25% mana. Originally this was below 50% mana, but it did get nerfed because it was just a ridiculously strong talent. It's still pretty solid, but is now debatable with Power Hungry, which is also very good in that it gives you extra damage, which is what Li-Ming is all about. But she is somewhat mana hungry when you have such short cooldown abilities that do tend to get reset. So Astral Presence still works. Force Armor, while it's nice to gain extra defense as Li-Ming, you don't want to sacrifice things that provide you offense, which is damage here and mana here. So Force Armor has to take a pass. Same thing goes with Etherwalker. It just doesn't provide enough extra damage, and the utility that it offers isn't really all that great when you're really focused on killing people primarily. So we will go ahead and still take Astral Presence. I think it's still the strongest talent in this tier. Level 4, Charged Blast. Basic attacking a hero recently hit by a magic missile does an extra 191 damage. It's nice to do damage, but the problem with this talent is that you'll usually hit people with magic missiles that are very far away and in fact outside your auto attack range. So you'll see to auto attack we're here, but magic missiles shoot practically twice as far. So you don't want to be doing that all that often. So that's a little bit unreliable. Triumvirate is really the strongest talent on this tier now. If Arcane Orb hits an enemy hero after traveling at least 65% of its base range, the cooldown is reduced by 6 seconds. So that takes it from a 10-second to a 4-second cooldown. And this does hit somewhat reliably, so that will come into play relatively often in team fights. And since Arcane Orb does so much damage and hits so many people, and you can just throw it out there, you don't even have to aim all that well, this can increase your damage pretty significantly. Finally, Dominance Takedowns restore 25% of your maximum health. That's not all that big of a heal on Li-Ming just because she has such a low health pool. And if you're already getting kills, you probably won't need health necessarily. It's kind of a win more talent. You're already winning, so how does it help you? All it does is help you win more. So finding extra damage with Triumvirate makes a lot more sense. Moving on to level 7, Seeker. If 3 magic missiles hit the same target, the third one deals an additional 274 damage. This is actually a pretty strong talent for isolating people and getting kills from single target burst damage. It's not that hard to hit 3 magic missiles on a target, particularly if they're running like in a straight line away from you. So 274 extra damage is nothing to scoff at. It's pretty solid. But also Zay's Vengeance is a strong talent too. Arcane Orb does an additional 25% more damage to enemies that are far away, but you do get penalized when they're up close even harder. That's not too bad because a vast majority of the time you'll be hitting people far away. If you are a Q type person who prefers magic missiles, Seeker is fine. If you like using your W a little more, Zay's Vengeance can also synergize with Triumvirate and work for you there. Finally, Calamity is, I think, a pretty solid talent as well. Your teleport does 542 damage to enemies near your destination. That is a ton, just a ton of damage. And if you're skilled and careful and you build for teleports at level 13 and 16, Calamity can help you secure a lot of kills against melee heroes who try to race you down. You can essentially outrace them because that does so much damage so quickly. And you can even use it multiple times in a row thanks to a level 13 talent, Illusionist, as well. So don't scoff at Calamity. It's good too. Really, you can't go wrong at level 7 as far as I'm concerned. But we'll go ahead and take Zay's Vengeance here. At level 10, Disintegrate is far and away the most popular talent. I don't know certainly that it's the best, but it's not bad. It's a 20-second cooldown. You get to fire a laser beam that does almost 1,200 damage over 2.5 seconds. It's a little bit hard to target people with it or get them to stay in the beam, but man, when it does, you just fire through their health so quickly. So this is definitely the damage talent and the kill securing talent, and I'll just go ahead and show it off here. It's a little awkward to aim, it's a little bit laggy in my experience, but you'll still hit more often than not. But I think people overlook Wave of Force. This is a nice AoE ability that when you cast it knocks back all enemies from that area, and it still does 425 damage, so it's easier to hit because you don't know how big this circle is, has a much quicker cast time, and it does allow you to control people so you can push back like an aggressive melee attacker who's trying to get on you. You can set up blocks to help secure team kills. You can do so many different things with Wave of Force that I think in the hands of a super skilled player it can actually take the edge over Disintegrate, but you really can't go wrong with Disintegrate. It is the favorite for a reason. Moving on to level 13, Cannoneer. When you use an ability, increase your next basic attack by 75% and cause it to deal ability damage. This is not a particularly popular talent. It's just a little bit awkward to use, much like other basic attack buffs. It's hard to keep track of. It's hard to see it in action, so most people pass on this one. Glass Cannon is really the all-in talent for Li-Ming. You increase your ability power by 15%, but decrease your maximum health by 15%. So you truly do become a Glass Cannon. You can do insane, just ridiculous, absurd amounts of damage. But you die from the lightest breeze. So you have to be careful with this one. Only pick Glass Cannon if you're on a team that's very defensive and strong in nature and you need the damage. You're incredibly skilled and experienced as Li-Ming, or you're just face rolling the enemy team and you can afford to play around. That's the only times I can recommend Glass Cannon. My favorite talent is Illusionist. This increases the range of your teleport by 50%, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's actually huge. And anytime you get chunked for health, in fact 15% or health or more, the cooldown is instantly refreshed, even though that can only happen once every 4 seconds. But you'll see how much bigger our teleport range is now. That's a huge difference. It buys you so much time, makes it easier to get out of all skill shots, and you can do a lot more fancy things with your positioning, particularly when you get 2 of these after a single thrall or butcher auto attack resets that teleport. You can kite people like crazy. Moving on to level 16, Fireflies drastically increases magic missile speed and lowers its cooldown by 1 second. Most people pass on this one. It does just change your timing, so you kind of have to relearn to cast your spell right in the middle of the game. And the cooldowns also, while nice to be able to fire missiles more often, sometimes it's awkward to use magic missiles more regularly than you already do. Mirror Ball, on the other hand, is very popular and a very good talent as well. It just makes your magic missile shoot 2 extra missiles, and we can go ahead and look at that. It doesn't necessarily change the aiming too much. It even makes it a little bit easier to hit at least 2 or 3 missiles if you short a target a little bit. In other words, if you aim about right here, no matter which direction they move, left, right, up, or down, there's a good chance 1 or 2 missiles are going to contact just because of the spread and the crossfire effect of having 5 missiles versus 3. So that does make it a little more powerful when you hit all 5, and a little more reliable too if your aim is a little soft. There's also Arcane Orbit. Your orb travels 25% farther and does 25% more damage. If you want to commit to an Arcane Orb build, there's certainly nothing wrong with this talent. I actually still like Diamond Skinned. I kind of like defensive talents as Li-Ming. I think if you're good with your skill shots, she has enough offensive output that having some extra defensive utility certainly never hurts. In this one, when you teleport, you gain 20% of your health as a shield for 4 seconds, which is very nice anytime someone gets in your face or the enemy team tries to lock you down. And then finally, at level 20, we have Temporal Flux. Disintegrate slows enemies by 60%. This is a pretty strong and popular talent. As I mentioned before, Disintegrate's beam can be a little bit hard to aim because it's just a little bit laggy in its response time, and if people are moving perpendicular to the beam, it's very hard to keep up and guess where they're going to move. But Temporal Flux makes it much easier. Since their movement speed is slowed, you can more smoothly alter the angle of the beam and keep it on them, so it makes it much better at securing kills. It also makes it harder for them to outrange the beam, so if they're running outside the beam, sometimes he'll just outrange it, and it won't matter how you aim. You just can't hit them because they're too far away and you're stationary. But this means it takes them longer to run from the beam, so it also helps secure kills in that manner as well. So it's a solid talent. It doesn't technically add damage, but it effectively does. Repulsion is another increase to Wave of Force. It increases the knockback distance by 150%. It increases the cast range by 100%, so you can see how just absurdly, ridiculously huge this cast range is. And we can also see just how ridiculously huge the knockback is. So you saw how far the mercenaries flew there. So I'm not necessarily a big fan of that talent. I think it actually makes it more awkward to use repulsion just because people move so far and the range is needlessly long. Typically you don't need it to be quite this long. Certainly you can block people from entering a gate and potentially secure some kills and stuff, but I don't think it's the strongest talent on this tier, even if you do go with Wave of Force. And by the way, that's not a common belief. A lot of people really like repulsion and think that it's good enough to make Wave of Force worth selecting all on its own. So experiment with it, see what you think, but it's not my personal recommendation. There's also Tal Rasha's Elements. Your abilities benefit from a 10% bonus damage as long as they aren't cast twice in a row. That used to be 20% damage, but Li-Ming got nerfed pretty quickly after her release because she was just too good. I still like Tal Rasha's Elements because I think 10% of 800 damage is still significant when it's happening over and over again. And in fact, this hits for even more than 800 damage depending on your build. So every time you cast an ability, if you're doing an extra 100, an extra 200, it can really start to add up and make a big difference. It's debatable whether it's better than Temporal Flux, depending on your playstyle, your rhythm with abilities, the enemy composition. Both these talents still work for me. And finally, Archon Pure Power. This is a pretty crazy one that allows you to change your form altogether and cast Disintegrate infinitely. But you can't cast other abilities and you're locked into a stationary position, which makes this really more of a gimmick ability than a useful one. So I would definitely pass on Archon Pure Power. So Temporal Flux is probably the most prominent ability at this, or talent at this tier. Repulsion works for a lot of people. Tal Rasha's Elements has lost some favor, but I still like it okay. So probably Temporal Flux is your most reliable choice. So there you have it. Those are all of the Li-Ming talents and abilities. When it comes to general strategy and tips, it's really just about staying at range, playing it safe, knowing when to commit to look for kills to chain on your trait. So if people are low, sometimes that you have to play aggressively. You kind of have to turn the corner from safety to cold-blooded killer. And when you're teleporting around and you're doing so much damage and it's chaotic, you can get 2 or 3 kills. You might die yourself, but making a 1 for 3 trade is still valuable. So learning those moments to go crazy will certainly make you much better. Otherwise, just play from range, poke down towers early, look for lots of chip damage using your W and your Q, secure kills with your ultimates, typically, and have fun, because Li-Ming is incredibly strong and an incredibly good hero to boot. If you have any questions about playing this hero, played her in Hero League at rank 1, I'm at level 9, I'm happy to answer questions and give tips. I'm not the world's best Li-Ming, but I'm certainly a suitable one. If you have questions on specific builds, I've built a couple, and I'm happy to recommend an updated one as well. It doesn't quite look like this, but there are a couple ways to build her. I always encourage you to check hotslogs.com as well for the latest and most up-to-date builds. So that's it for my first impressions of Li-Ming. Hopefully they are your first impressions and you still were able to learn a little bit something. We'll make sure future first impressions videos are more on time, right after heroes are released, so they're a little more valuable. But in the effort of consistency and addressing every new hero that comes out, here was your first impressions Li-Ming video. So thanks so much for watching. Again, hit me up in the comments if you have questions or thoughts. Appreciate all your time, and until next time, game on.